London, how we doing? We all right? All right. Yeah, my name is Ben Bailey-Smith. I'm an artist born and bred in West London. But you know, before I got into show business, I spent 10 years as a youth worker, working in youth clubs in Edgware Road, in Paddington, in Queen's Park, Maida Vale, set up my own youth center for the children of refugees and asylum seekers in Queen's Park. So I had quite a profound shift from working in my community, working with local people and working with people from overseas, living beneath the poverty line, into show business. Quite a big shift, to be honest. I've always kept one eye on the community that I came from. And last year, there was a huge tragedy, and I have to say a travesty, that occurred right in the center of my old stomping grounds, essentially, in the fire that engulfed the Grenfell Tower, causing multiple fatalities. Fascinatingly, out of that fire, a phoenix arose in the shape of Justice for Grenfell, which is a community-led, non-profit organization fighting for justice in an area where no one else was willing to go. It's a tough fight. It's an incredible fight. It's one that I've been privileged enough to see up close. And tonight I want to share with you some of the stories from right within that organization. So yeah, what we have for you is something unique, a real piece of insight, I would say. To tell us about their work, please welcome to the stage Moyra Samuel. Moyra.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good to have you. Now, you are somebody who is from a lot sunnier climes than the UK, but you have lived in West London for a long, long time. How did you become involved in Justice for Grenfell?
I became involved in Justice for Grenfell because, obviously, I live 300 meters from the tower. I saw the fire on the night, and I'd been active in the community before the fire, actually fighting against gentrification, fighting against a whole range of stuff that the borough had been doing. And I was so enraged after the fire that I organized a demonstration. And following that demonstration, I was invited to speak at the first silent march that was called.
And when was that?
That was called on, I think I called the demonstration on the Friday, the fire was on the Tuesday, and on the Monday the silent walk happened. And when I was invited to speak, I think it was at that point I met Yvette and Ishmael, and I thought I actually want to be part of a campaign that fights for justice.
So Yvette Williams, a co-founder, Ishmael, her co-founder of Justice for Grenfell. You mentioned a little about some of the work you were doing before the fire. So you were very active within community organization around what kind of stuff? Housing, fairness around housing, or?
Well, I was part of a number of local campaigns because we had seen the council. We'd seen the change in demographic and the way the council was behaving towards us as a North Kensington community. So I was part of Westway 23, which was actually fighting for some of the resources under the Westway, which was bequeathed to the community, but it was being taken away.
Right.
I was also part of the Silchester campaign, because right opposite Grenfell, there are 3 towers, huge towers, and the council's plans had been to demolish those and actually move generations of communities who'd lived in there. Huge number, 1,500. And so we'd been fighting against that. I'd also been part of Save Our Library, which had been leased to a private school. Library had been there since the 1800s, as well as actually saving our college, the local college, which I'd taught at years ago, Warnington College. So there'd been a number of campaigns I'd been involved in. And so when Grenfell happened, in particular because personally I'd arranged to meet Ed Darfin, who was part of the Grenfell Action Group,
Right.
who wrote that prophetic,
Of course, I remember seeing him on the news.
blog which predicted the fire. And I'd arranged to meet him the day of the fire.
The day of the fire.
The day of the fire, I'd
You'd
arranged to meet Ed.
Wow.
So when I woke up to the fire in my kind of sleepy state, I suddenly realized that actually Ed may not be alive, which drove me at 2 o'clock in the morning to actually watch the fire. So, that kind of history of what we'd been fighting against before the fire, I think instilled in me what I feel I sort of refer to as a kind of white rage. I was so angry, I thought, so this is what it's come to. After everything that we've been fighting for, this is what you now do. You burn 70, well, at that time we didn't know how many people, but
Sure.
you set a building on fire because of, first thing was we noticed there were, the cuts in the fire service, so how long it took people to get in, some of the safety features, which we were very, very much aware of. And I think I was also enraged because the days after the fire, there was no evidence of the council.
No.
This council we'd been fighting, we kept going around going, where are they? Who is looking after these people who've actually lost their homes?
It's fascinating to think that for a minute there, it almost seemed like, well, this is other people's problem. This is one of those situations wherein we've got something nasty's happened in a nasty area to nasty people. We don't really need to know that much about it. And for a second there, it felt like it was going to be swept under the rug. And it's fascinating speaking to someone like you who was around working on all these other little issues. I say little, they're not really little, but, a number of issues that were a problem for these residents for no other reason, it seems to me, other than the fact that they were working class,
Absolutely.
And that's troubling. And it also says to me that this fire is beyond one fire. There's a whole number of stories behind this fire, and it's incredible that Justice for Grenfell is brave enough to highlight all of those stories. You come from South Africa, right?
Yes.
And you spent some time fighting apartheid when apartheid was pretty nasty.
It was grim. It was pretty grim. Dark days.
There must be a deeper insight for you. What do you see? I mean, I can't imagine. I remember being a kid in the 80s and, we didn't buy South African apples. And then, we fought apartheid through T-shirts and badges. You fought it for real. What do you see any relationship between the fights you fought before on inequality and what's going on?
I think that actually growing up in an unequal society, it's kind of in your DNA. You smell it, you sniff it very quickly and very easily. And actually, you want it to stop, And that was the whole thing about actually looking at the way the struggle in South Africa was conducted, looking at the dignity, the strength, enormous strength, and the degradation, the deaths that people had endured. In the interest of equality, you realize that it's possible. It's a huge inspiration, the way South Africans fought for justice.
Right.
But also what's inspirational is the fact that actually the fight against apartheid in South Africa was not, even though it was black people who were largely discriminated against, it was not something that only black people were involved in.
Sure.
Actually, the ANC was a very multi-racial organization. And so the kind of lessons I learned from that is that actually with Grenfell, it's not just our community that needs to fight this. This is
An injustice against
yes.
one is an injustice against us all.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, you know, I feel inspired just hearing you talk. Ladies and gentlemen, please, Moyra Samuel. Thanks, Moyra. Good job.